Well, the CB200 project is dead.
Look at all this mess. Yikes.
So the bike isn't actually dead. The CB200 is actually working good. I went ahead and went through the carburetors and I realized that the float height was actually set too low. So when I went to put the float bowls on the carburetors, that was keeping the gas from going into the carburetor itself because it was closing the valve when the floats kind of pushed up into the carburetor. So I went ahead and addressed that, and then I was able to keep the bike running for a little bit longer. However, I did have further bigger leaks from my petcock, and I realized that that was because I have bad seals inside of that petcock. So I went ahead and ordered another one. And so one of the biggest things that I found out was that the slides were actually staying up too high. So the reason for that is because the throttle cable was not adjusted properly, and therefore the slides were not dropping all the way down to their seat position. So that caused the engine to rev up whenever we went to go turn on the bike. So that was no good. I went ahead and adjusted that, and the bike was turning out great. It was turning on great. It was staying at idle, but I was having too many issues with the petcock, so I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna order the petcock and get everything the way it's supposed to be. I went ahead and ordered the gasket for the other side of the bike, which is where the clutch goes, so that I can work on the clutch and get that adjusted properly, because you do have to take that whole cover off. So I don't have that gasket, so I went ahead and ordered that. But as I was doing all of that and I was ready to get back to working on the bike, I realized that now I have an oil leak on this side. Now I'm gonna have to order more gaskets, and well, that's just the way it goes sometimes. So now I have to make sure that I find out where it's leaking from, but as you can see, I have a big puddle of oil on this side. Find out where it's leaking from, and then from there, I can order those gaskets or those seals that I need so that I can fully seal the bike, make sure it's running properly, and do all of that. So long story short, I think I'm gonna take a little longer in working on this bike and getting it finished, but that's okay because we have more stuff to work on here in the shop. And one of those things to work on is my Honda CB400T. I need to do an oil change on that bike. That's my personal bike, and I need to get it back up and running. I went ahead and cleaned out the carbs recently just to make sure that they're working properly and I can go down the road in that bike. And yeah, that's what we're gonna do in this video. So follow along and let's get to work. All right, so I have you set down here on the floor so y'all can see better what I'm doing. There's a couple of things that we need to do. First, we have to remove the oil drain plug, of course. On the CB400Ts, there is this 17 millimeter, I believe it is, bolt that goes here on the oil pan. But then there's also a 12 millimeter one that goes to this housing, and this is the one that houses the oil filter. So we need to first remove this one, drain the oil, and then we have to remove this one and then drain the oil from here as well as remove the oil filter. But as you can see, my motorcycle is fairly low. So what happens here is I'm not able to fit my regular, car drain pan to be able to drain the oil. So I'm going to show you a little trick that I use to be able to fit something in here where we can catch all the oil and still make it work. So I have here a shoebox. Now usually the shoebox, as you can see, it kind of doesn't fit that well in there, but we don't need it to go all the way to that side. The bike is leaning to one side, so I need to lean it over to this side, so there'll be plenty of clearance here to be able to go in there. But what I'm gonna do to that shoebox is I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of trash baggage. So what I like to do is I like to use the trash bag and just set it inside of my shoebox, just like that. And then I can just set it in here. Now you want to make sure that your trash bag does not have obviously any holes in it or anything like that. So that way you can kind of fit it properly underneath your bike and it won't leak. So the idea is that we'll use this trash bag to catch the oil coming out of the bike, and then we'll collect it here, and then we'll transfer it over to our regular oil pan oil drain pan where we catch all the oil for like a car, and that's where I store mine, and then I take it to the recycling center. But so yeah, so let's go ahead and give this a try. So for now, I'm gonna move that out of the way. I have my 17mm wrench here. Now this is kind of a pipe wrench, but it'll work just fine. Man, that's on there. Okay, so let's see if we can give that a... Nope. All right, I think I'm gonna use a ratchet. All right, so here I have a ratchet. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in there, have an extension on it. And then we do, whoa, that's on there. Jesus. All right. Man, that is on there. Okay, let me get a breaker. All right, so I have my trusty pipe here. I call this my breaker bar, but it's just a regular pipe. And I'm gonna put it right here and try to break that loose. There we go. Wow, that was on there. I hit my arm in that. Oh, Jesus. Okay. All right, so I think it's time for us to undo this bolt, and then we can go ahead and drain the oil pan. All right, hopefully y'all can see that. We're gonna go ahead and just unscrew that. Now I'm changing the oil on this bike because I need to get this bike up and running. I've had it, I didn't use it for a while. And so I want to start using it again. And there's a lot of things that I need to fix on it, but you know, stuff happens sometimes. So here we go. Now I want to make sure that the oil doesn't splash all over the place. There we go. Now I can't stress enough, you know, make sure that the bag does not have any holes. Yeah, that oil kind of looks pretty clean, to be honest. Now I'm changing it because I was having issues with the carbs, and I think it was running a little rich, so I don't know if maybe some fuel got into the oil as well. So I want to just be on the safe side. So I'm going to remove that. Now, if you want to make sure that you're not leaking any oil, kind of move the bag around, just kind of make sure, because the last thing you want is for a bunch of oil on your floor. There we go. I'm gonna give that a few seconds so that it can drain properly. Okay, so like I mentioned before, the bike is a little bit tilted to the left, or actually it's very tilted to the left because it's a very low bike and the kickstand just worked out that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to tilt the bike so that I can get most of the oil out. There we go. Notice how our homemade oil pan, or yeah, I guess you can call it drain pan. is working pretty good. I usually use the bags that are like heavy duty trash bags, like that are meant for leaves and stuff like that. And just all you have to do is just make sure you inspect them, make sure they don't have any small leaks or anything like that, any small holes, and then you'll be in good shape. I think we got most of it out. And as you can see, the leaking kind of stopped. I'm gonna go ahead and put that off to the side just a bit. I'm gonna use the same trash bag just to make sure that nothing kind of leaks on my floor here. And I'm gonna start removing this bolt. So here I have my 12mm ratchet. I'm just gonna pop that loose. And again, this is going to leak a little bit of oil. So as you can see, it's starting to leak already. Hopefully y'all can see that. And that's what we want. You don't want to take it off suddenly because then the oil's gonna get everywhere. So just unbolt it and leave it, dripping for a little bit until the oil comes out. Just like that. Let it drip. The oil actually looks like it's in pretty decent shape. All right, here we go. We're gonna go for it. I'm gonna try to remove the whole thing. Now, one thing you want to do is as you're taking this out, just make sure you pay attention to how everything goes. So when you go back to installing everything, you kind of have a general idea of how things, go back on the bike. And what I mean by that is, if you notice this cover has a rounded edge here. So that rounded edge, it's basically, so if you hit something on the road, it kind of just, it's rounded off, so it kind of just slides. The other side is a little bit more squared off. So obviously if you put it the other way, it might not even go on there, but that way you at least know that you won't make that mistake of putting it, the wrong way. Now, as you're taking this off, there is a bolt that is in the middle that has a gasket. I'll show you that here in a bit. Here we go. And that is our oil filter. There we go. Our HF111. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this. Now, as I'm removing this, I'm making sure that nothing falls off. Oh, here you go. As you can see, there is a small spring that goes in there. You wanna make sure that you know where that goes. Because that spring is what pushes that filter up into the engine, and you want to have that in the right place. So just remember how that went. Here we go, we have our filter. I'm going to throw that where the oil goes. Not going to use that anymore. And then we have our small spring here. This small spring, like I mentioned, goes in here, and that's it. Now I'm going to put this down here just a bit because I want to show you. There is this bolt that is, it looks like it's attached to this housing, but it's actually not. This one obviously turns, as you can see, and you can spin it off here. There we go. All right, but notice when you take it off, it does have a little gasket right here. That gasket is what seals the oil right there. It doesn't let the oil come out through there. And then of course it has this kind of half moon shaped gasket right here. And you want to inspect this because this is where all the filtering happens. As you can see, there's a little bit of sediment going on down there. Hopefully y'all can see that. So you want to inspect this and make sure that there's not a lot of metal shavings. You might see some small particles or some small
like pieces of metal, I would say that that's normal. As long as you don't see glitter stuff going on in there where it's pretty bad, then you should be in good shape. So I'm gonna go ahead and take these, put them, just clean them out real quick, and then I'll hopefully put them back on the bike.
All right, so I got my parts cleaned and they look pretty nice. This is the cover for the oil filter, and I was able to find a gasket, which we're going to use to be able to put in here. But I also wanted to show you some differences between two of the filters that I went ahead and purchased. Now, these two filters, I got this one from High Flow Filtro. This is a brand that I've bought, many times before, and they seem to be good quality filters. I get these online, so I'm not sure where you guys get them from, but I also bought this one right here, which is a generic style. It's part number OF-01. It's a generic style type of oil filter. And I wanted to compare, the difference. The biggest difference with this is that this filter right here came with the oil ring that goes around this bolt right here that you use to clamp everything together. That's the only one I was able to find that comes with that O-ring. Now that's a simple O-ring. I'm sure, High Flow Filter assumes that you can find that oil ring, pretty much anywhere. But this is the only one that came with that oil ring. And I was looking at the differences and I was actually fairly surprised. These two are the High Flow Filter. I have two pairs. For no reason, I just bought two to have in stock. But if you look at these, there's really a big difference. First of all, the High Flow Filtro one is maybe about, I don't know, it's just a hair taller than the generic one. So it's a little bit taller. And if you look at the material that it's made out of, the High Flow Filtro looks like it's a lot more coarse, like a coarse material. I'm not sure why that is, but this one, the generic one, looks like it has very fine and intertwined material. So it kind of gives you the sense that maybe this one will filter better. And also, this generic one, to be honest, it has a lot more pleats here, which if there's more of these pleats, that means there's more surface area, which means that it'll filter a lot more. Now, not to say that this one doesn't have a lot of pleats, it also does, but I kind of went ahead and counted them just one by one, and I was able to turn this filter almost twice by the time I got to one side of this one. So that's, I don't know, I think that's a big consideration there. So more surface area, more filtering action there, I guess you can say. And so, I don't know, I might go ahead and use this generic one, to be honest, because I mean, it looks like it's very good quality. Also, one of the things that I noticed is that the inside portion of this filter, the High Flow Filter, or the High Flow Filtro brand, is that this inside part, there's very little holes inside of this part. So basically, the oil that comes in here will have a harder time escaping through here because there's less holes. This one, on the other hand, the generic one, has a whole bunch of holes in there, which would, in theory, I think, allow for more oil to escape faster and therefore be able to filter the oil better. Now, I don't know that that's the case. I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but it seems as though there's a lot more holes in this one compared to this one. So I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but for now, I think we're gonna use this generic one. Again, I've used these before, haven't had any issues with it. This is not a high performance engine or anything like that, so I think we're gonna be okay. But I just wanted to show you all some of the differences between these two in case you all ever go to ordering any for your motorcycle. But now that we have those, oh, I also wanted to show you, a lot of people don't realize, but this bolt here, some people just clean it up. They change the oil ring that's there and that's it. But one of the things you should also look at when inspecting these
is that there is a spring in here, and it has a through pin here that kind of goes from one side to the other side. And you want to look at that because there is that spring in there is there for a reason. Now the reason that that spring is there is because just like in your automotive type filters, there is a bypass valve inside of your filter. I'm sure y'all have noticed that in regular car filters, they actually have a media that looks just like this inside. However, there's a little valve at the bottom. So if your filter were to ever clog up completely for whatever reason, there's too much dirt or whatever is going on in your engine, then that bypass will pretty much open up so that oil can pass directly through to the engine and therefore not cause your engine to starve out of oil, causing maybe, you know, some damage to your engine. Now, these filters don't have a valve themselves, but what does have a valve is this bolt right here. So it has like a little bypass valve right there. So what it does is if it starts to, you know, have basically too much, or it gets clogged up and there's pressure that builds up, there is a little valve in here that will kind of open up a secondary hole there, and it'll act like a bypass. Now you want to make sure that that is free and moving and that it's not stuck on there. Hopefully y'all can see that. But you want to make sure that this is free because in case it does starve from oil, or there's not enough oil that's going through the filter, you do want for this valve to open so that it can release some of that pressure. So just to keep that in mind, a lot of people look at this and they think it's a bolt, but no, there's a higher function to this bolt here. And you want to make sure that it's nice and clean. So always inspect it. I put a little pick in here, and if it moves easily and there's no restriction, you can kind of feel the tension here from the spring. If that's moving up and down correctly and it's well oiled, then you shouldn't have any issues. I'm gonna go ahead and replace the O-ring here. So I'm just gonna use my pick to remove it. And then I'll go ahead and replace it with a new one, and we can throw everything back on the bike. All right, so this is my drain pan that I wasn't able to fit under my motorcycle, and this is the one that I used to drain the oil from my motorcycle in my shoebox here, my DIY shoebox here. Now you want to be very careful when you're doing this. It's happened to me where, you know, I've had it break on me before, but you know, try not to have it break on you. All you have to do is just kind of lift this box with the oil in it, put it a little bit off to the side. Make sure that you don't do what I was about to do. Make sure that you open up your drain here on your oil pan, and then put your oil here, and then you're gonna kind of tie it up like that. Don't remove your box until you know that it's up and on top of your pan here, your drain pan. And then that's it. Once you have your oil on top of your drain pan and your plug is open, your breather is open so that the oil can go in there, all you have to do is just make a small hole in your trash bag. There we go. And then we can drain our old oil into our pan. That's pretty simple. That's what I like to do to make sure I don't make a mess. And as you can see, I mean, the shoebox is nice and clean. You can probably reuse that. You obviously won't be able to reuse this bag. And yeah, it's pretty simple. This also works like if you're working on your car and you don't have an oil drain pan like this one, and you need to change your oil, this will work. Just make sure that you have this. Now, you don't want to just put everything in here and throw it away in your trash can. Even though some landfills have a way of collecting all this oil and turn it into power and stuff like that, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you take it over to the recycling center where they have the proper ways of recycling this oil.
Or you can take it to your local auto parts store. They actually have a way of recycling it there, and they take it for free. So once we drain most of the oil here, my oil filter kind of stayed in there. That's fine. I'm just gonna put everything into this box, and I'm gonna throw all of that stuff away. And we're done. So we can put this aside, and we can continue on our oil change process. So we're back under the bike, and I went ahead and cleaned the housing, and we got our new gasket on there, and we have our new oil ring in this bolt here. So that's said and done. Like I mentioned before, there's only really a specific way in which this housing goes on the bike, and as you can see right here, there's a little notch, and that notch is meant to go there. So there's really no wrong way, or there's really not a big chance of putting it, you know, another way, because it wouldn't fit, because there's, as you can see, there's a rounded edge here. So it only goes on one way is what I'm trying to say. There. All right. So what you want to do here is you want to make sure that there's, you know, the surface is clean, everything is nice and clean there. Your gasket here, that it's a little bit oiled up so that we have a good seal. And then you just kind of go ahead and place your filter in here. Now, there is going to be some pressure that you're gonna feel there with this bolt that we have to put in there, on there, and that's because the spring is what's kind of holding everything together there. Once you kind of get it into place, you're going to have to kind of push this housing in, make sure that that filter is seated, and then you can go ahead and start tightening up that filter. Again, it's a 12 millimeter. You just want to hold it. You don't want the bolt to do all the heavy lifting, because then you're putting a lot of stress on the threads. You want to just kind of hold the filter housing, kind of push it in a little bit. You don't have to go too crazy, but just kind of hold it in, and then start to kind of put in your bolt, and making sure that it's in the correct orientation. And that'll keep your threads nice and clean, and it'll go in perfect without any issues. Here we go. Now I'm sure there's, you're gonna feel it. I'm sure there's a torque spec for this, but just kind of get that bolt pretty snug on there. You don't want to over tighten it either, because you could cross thread that bolt, but get it up on there pretty snug. And I think that we're good there. Now we just have to put our bolt back on. So we're gonna put our bolt here. There we go. Now I added a little washer here. It's like a crush washer, but it was a little bigger on the outside, so I went ahead and trimmed it a little bit, and hopefully that works. If I see that it leaks or something, I can just remove the bolt, hold the oil, and then just basically put another crush washer and see that that works. But this one should do the trick. Now, I'm not sure why a lot of people don't know about the CB400s. They're actually really nice bikes. This is the Hawk 2. They had a Hawk 1 and a Hawk 2, which was, the Hawk 2 was a little bit more, it had an actual transmission. There was one that was like the Honda Matic, which was kind of like an automatic transmission type of bike. This bike actually has 5 gears, and it works pretty good. This bike is also, believe it or not, kickstart, but it was one of the first bikes to come out with CDI. So it doesn't have a point system. It has a CDI box, which is somewhere up there. Kind of hid it from view.
It's in the front over there. But yeah, I honestly, I've never really had any issues starting this bike. Besides the carbs, the original carbs were kind of junk. I don't like the whole vacuum slide thing. I think I really don't like it. So I went ahead and replaced them with this BM32 carbs, and they work pretty good. I really like the way they work. And I haven't had any issues. Obviously, when you let it sit for a while, you have to go ahead and go back and clean your carbs. But aside from that, the bike has been working pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some oil in this and add some gas and see if we can get the bike started. All right, so it's time to add the oil to the motorcycle. And as you can see here, we have our dipstick. It's pretty long and it's made out of plastic. On Hondas, like the 74 Honda CB550s and 500s and all of those, they are metal and they're a lot shorter. But this is a newer style bike. I believe that around this, the 78s, they started to kind of modernize these bikes. As you can see, the fins on this type of motor, it's a CB400, but you can see they're starting to get a little modern with it. And I know they have a lot more modern pieces to them as well, which was good. I mean, they ended up being very efficient and working a lot better in some ways, right? So I have my little funnel here, and I have exactly 2.5 liters or around 2.6 quarts of oil. Now this is Rotella 15 weight 40. This is actually heavy duty diesel oil, which I like to use, to be honest. A lot of Honda guys use it on their bikes. I used to use actually the 50 weight, but the 40 weight works just as good. This is supposed to be good for older style bikes. Now this bike itself, it's a newer style bike, unlike the old Hondas, but again, it's a wet clutch. It still works properly. I've used it, never had any issues with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in there. Like I mentioned before, I went ahead and pre-measured it to 2.5 liters. So I only have that amount in this jug, so I don't need to worry about measuring it. I'm just gonna pour it all in there, and we'll go from there. So the way I figured out that it was 2.5 liters is because, liters, is because I measured it using the bottle here. It has the markings here. And the rest of the oil went ahead and took out until I got to that mark. And I have that oil in another container. Once I pour this into the engine, then I'm gonna go ahead and simply pour that oil back into this container so I have some for the next oil change. I'm just gonna go ahead and check, make sure I don't have any visible leaks or anything like that as I'm pouring the oil. Last thing we want is to have a leak and then we poured all the oil in there and now we have to get it all out. Everything kind of looks good so far, so I'm gonna keep going. All right, so the carbs are actually rebuilt, so they haven't seen any gas. I've had them rebuilt for a couple of weeks now. So they should be working properly. I didn't change any jets or anything like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pour some gas into the engine and see if we can get this going. All right, so here we go. We're going to try to start the bike. I do see that I have a little bit of a leak here from my inline petcock here. But it should be fine. I also see that I have another leak coming from one of my breathers. Hopefully it's just a float bowl that's kind of sticking, or a float that's kind of sticking. Gonna go ahead and tap that a little bit. And hopefully we can get the bike running. Notice how it's
super dusty. I mean, I've had the bike here in the shop while I've been working on my other bike, and I mean, it's super dirty, but I haven't really adjusted the throttle or anything like that, so we're gonna see how that works. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the valve here, fill up the float bowls, and see if I have any leaks. I smell gas. I see gas here in the filter, but I don't see any leaks. I don't see any leaks, so I think we should be in good shape. The only leak that I see is from the actual petcock itself, but it probably just has some dry seals. Okay, so I think we can see if we can give this a go. So I'm gonna put the chokes up. This bike has individual chokes. So if you want to run choke, you have to run choke on both carbs. It's just a little lever that goes up. They're individual style levers there. And yeah, so let's see if we can get the bike up and running. Now again, this is CDI ignition. I think that's what it's called, yeah. So basically it has an electronic pickup on this side actually, which is where the stator is. It has a little magnet and it has a little pickup that tells on that box where the ignition or where the position of the engine is so that it can fire those cylinders. So in a way, it's a little bit better than having a point system because it's a little bit more precise, but yeah, it pretty much works the same way. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this to choke, put my run position there, and be honest with you, this bike does not have a battery. I don't think it's ever had a working battery, but I've always been able to just kickstart it. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it a try here. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Okay. I think I was putting the chokes down or up. It's actually down. I don't know why I did that. Here we go. Nice. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again. Nice. I think one of the cylinders went out there at the end. I'm not sure what happened, but nice. That's pretty good. We just changed the oil, so we got to give it a little bit just to kind of circulate, but yeah, that sounded nice. So I think I'm gonna call it there. The bike turned on, it works. We're gonna soon take this bike out for a ride, show you all how it rides. But overall, I mean, this bike runs great. I still wanna work on the CB200. We need to finish that, but we just have to wait for parts. So unfortunately, that's gonna have to wait a little bit, but maybe I can show you more videos about this one in the meanwhile. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Let's try it again.